The night. Everything changed. The rain tapped softly against the tall windows of the Harrison mansion, creating a gentle rhythm that filled the quiet evening air. Marcus Harrison stood in his home office, reviewing documents that blurred together after another long day at the investment firm. At 34 years old, he had built an empire, but lately, the numbers on the spreadsheets felt hollow, meaningless. Down the hallway, in the nursery painted soft lavender, his 6-month-old daughter Emma slept peacefully in her crib. The sight of her always made Marcus's chest tighten with a complicated mixture of love and grief. Emma had her mother's delicate features, the same button nose, the same way of scrunching up her face when she dreamed. His wife Catherine had died during childbirth, leaving Marcus alone in this enormous house with a newborn baby and no idea how to navigate single fatherhood. The first 3 months had been a fog of sleepless nights, overwhelming fear, and a grief so deep it felt like drowning. That's when Sarah Mitchell had arrived. Sarah was 26, with warm brown eyes and a gentleness that immediately put Emma at ease. She came with excellent references, a degree in early childhood education, and a quiet competence that Marcus had come to rely on completely. She arrived each morning at 7 and stayed until Emma's bedtime at 8, sometimes later when Marcus worked late, which was often. Marcus watched Sarah with his daughter, seeing how naturally she cared for Emma, how she sang lullabies in a soft voice, how she knew exactly what each different cry meant. He paid her well, better than market rate, because he knew what she did was invaluable. But lately, he'd noticed something that troubled him. Sarah looked tired. Not just normal tired, but exhausted in a way that settled into her bones. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Sometimes her hands trembled slightly when she lifted Emma. She never complained, never mentioned anything personal, but Marcus had built his fortune on reading people, on noticing details others missed. Tonight, Marcus had told Sarah she could leave at 6. He'd taken the rare step of clearing his evening to spend time with Emma. He'd fed her bottle, changed her diaper, still awkward at it even after 6 months, and rocked her to sleep. The simple act of holding his daughter, feeling her small body relax against his chest, had filled him with a peace he rarely felt anymore. Now, as the clock approached 9:30, Marcus decided to check on Emma one more time before heading to bed. He walked quietly down the carpeted hallway, his footsteps making no sound. The nursery door was slightly ajar, and he pushed it open gently. What he saw made him freeze in the doorway. Sarah was there, lying on the floor beside Emma's crib. She wasn't just sitting or resting. She was fully stretched out on the hardwood floor, using her folded jacket as a pillow, covered only by her thin cardigan. Her eyes were closed, her breathing deep and even. She was sound asleep. Marcus's first reaction was confusion. Why was she here? She'd left hours ago. He'd heard the front door close, heard her car start in the driveway. Then he noticed her car keys on the floor beside her, her purse tucked under her head with the jacket. He stood there for a long moment, watching her sleep on the hard floor, and something shifted inside his chest. This wasn't a nanny who'd accidentally dozed off during work hours. This was a young woman so exhausted she'd come back, let herself in with the key he'd given her for emergencies, and collapsed on his nursery floor. Quietly, carefully, Marcus backed out of the room. His mind was racing. He walked downstairs to his study and opened his laptop. He pulled up Sarah's employment file, looking at the address she'd listed. Then he did something he probably shouldn't have. He searched for the address online. What he found made his stomach sink. The address was for a weekly rate motel on the east side of town, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour or the week, with bars on the windows and a reputation Marcus knew too well from his work with urban development projects. It was the sort of place where people stayed when they had nowhere else to go. Marcus sat back in his chair, pieces of a puzzle falling into place. Sarah's dedication to her job. The way she sometimes arrived early, always stayed late. How she never mentioned family, friends, or weekend plans. The exhaustion that had been growing worse over the past few weeks. He thought about what he paid her. It was a good salary, generous even. But if she was living in that motel, paying weekly rates, trying to save money for something better, barely getting by in one of the city's most expensive housing markets. Suddenly it made sense. She was working herself to exhaustion, probably taking other jobs, living in conditions no one should have to endure. Marcus had been poor once, though not many people knew that. Before Harvard Business School, before the hedge fund, before the mansion, there had been a small apartment with a single mother who worked 3 jobs. He'd slept on a mattress on the floor until he was 12. He remembered what it felt like to be tired down to your bones, to never feel truly safe or settled. He climbed the stairs again, this time going to the guest wing of his house. The largest guest suite was on the 3rd floor, with its own bathroom, a small sitting area, and windows that overlooked the garden. It had been Catherine's mother's room when she visited, but she hadn't come since Catherine died, unable to face the memories. Marcus opened the windows to air out the room, turned on the heating, checked that everything was clean and ready. Then he went back downstairs and did something he hadn't done in months. He called his housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, at home. "Mrs. Chen, I'm sorry to call so late. I need your help with something." The next morning, Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she panicked, disoriented. Then she saw the soft blue walls, the comfortable bed she was lying in, and memory came flooding back. She'd returned to the house last night after being evicted from her motel room. 3 months of saving every penny for an apartment deposit, and then her car had needed emergency repairs that wiped out her savings. She'd had nowhere to go, no family in the city, no close friends to burden. So she'd come back to the only place that felt like home anymore, planning to sleep on the nursery floor for just one night, just until she figured something out. Mr. Harrison must have found her. She remembered him gently waking her, his voice soft and kind, telling her not to worry, leading her here. She'd been so exhausted she'd barely registered what was happening before falling back asleep. Now there was a knock on the door. "Sarah, may I come in?" She sat up quickly, mortified. "Mr. Harrison, I'm so sorry. I can explain." He opened the door, carrying a tray with coffee and breakfast. "There's nothing to apologize for, Sarah. I'm the one who should apologize. I should have noticed you were struggling. It's not your responsibility. Please, let me speak." Marcus set the tray down and sat in the armchair by the window. "I know you've been living in that motel on Riverside. I know you lost your room, and I have a proposition for you." Sarah's cheeks burned with shame, but Marcus's expression was gentle, understanding. "This room is yours if you want it," he continued. "You're already here every day from early morning until late evening. Emma has become attached to you. Honestly, so have I. Your presence has made this house feel less empty. The room comes with the job, no change to your salary. You'll have complete privacy, your own space. Think of it as a live-in position, if that makes it more comfortable." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "Mr. Harrison, I can't—" "Marcus. Please call me Marcus. And you can. You already do so much for Emma, for me. This house has 10 bedrooms, Sarah. 10 bedrooms with no one in them except me and a baby. Catherine always said a house should be filled with life, with people. It would honor her memory to have you here." The mention of his late wife, spoken with such openness, made Sarah's heart ache. She'd seen the wedding photos throughout the house, had noticed the way Marcus sometimes stood in the nursery doorway, watching Emma with such profound sadness. What about? Won't people think? Sarah struggled to articulate the concern. Marcus understood immediately. "Mrs. Chen will be here every day, as always. My sister visits regularly. This is simply an employer providing housing to an employee, which is common for live-in positions. But more than that, Sarah, I don't care what people think. You take care of the most precious thing in my life. You deserve security and comfort." Sarah wiped her eyes, overwhelmed. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Over the following weeks, something unexpected happened. The house began to feel like a home again. Sarah would sometimes join Marcus for dinner after Emma was asleep, and they'd talk about books, about their childhoods, about their dreams. Marcus learned that Sarah had lost both her parents in a car accident 2 years ago, that she'd moved to the city to start over, that she wanted to open a child development center someday. Marcus found himself laughing again, something he hadn't done since Catherine died. Emma thrived with Sarah nearby constantly, meeting all her developmental milestones early. The house filled with the sounds of a baby's laughter, of Sarah singing, of life being lived. One evening, 6 months after Sarah had moved in, Marcus stood in the nursery doorway watching Sarah rock Emma to sleep. The scene before him was so full of love, so peaceful, that it took his breath away. He realized that somewhere along the way, Sarah had become more than Emma's nanny. She'd become family.